This is the video for Module 1, the end of module review. So the first question is 5 and 582 thousandths times 100. You could set it up using the standard algorithm, which is like this. But that's a lot of work. There's no need to do that work. So what I can do is just ask myself that when I multiply, which way do I move the decimal? I move the decimal to the right to make my number larger. And because there's two zeros in 100, I move the decimal 2 spots to the right. So I jump 1, 2. I'm going to rewrite what my number is. And then I'm going to find the number that matches that. And when I look down my list, the number that matches that is choice B. Second question is the same thing. I could set this up as a standard algorithm. This is a lot of work to set this up and solve it this way. So instead of solving it this way, I can look and say that I'm dividing. When I divide, I move my decimal to the left so that my answer gets smaller. Since there's two zeros in here, I know I have to make two jumps. So I jump 1, 2, and I rewrite my number so it's easier for me to find my answer. And when I look down, I find that my answer is letter A. Next one is number 3, which says which multiplication sentence is equivalent. There should be a comma right in here to 10,000. So since there are 4 zeros, I know I need 4 tens. So this has 2 tenths, this has 3 tens, this has 4 tens. And this one down here, I always check my last answer as well. It has 5 tens, so that cannot be the answer. I can always check to make sure it makes sense and say 10 times 10, which is 100. And then I can do 100 times 10, which is 1,000. And then I can do 1,000 times 10, which is 10,000. So my answer does make sense. Question 4. What is the standard form of 7 and 65 hundredths times 10 to the second power? Since I'm multiplying, I know that I'm jumping to the right. We had talked about that before. 10 to the second, I'm going to look at the 2. It tells me to jump 2 spots to the right, so I go 1, 2. That makes this number. So I find the number over here, that is 765, and that's the answer. Another way to look at it is multiplying, we know I go to the right. I can change this number if I want. Since there's a 2 in the exponent, it tells me that it's 100 if it's easier for me to look at the numbers that way. The next one is to convert 8 meters to centimeters. The first thing I do when I'm converting is that King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. So the first thing I know is that I'm going from meters, which is right here. The unit is meters, and I'm going 2 centimeters. So I go to the right of centimeters, I'm going to go to the right, and I know I'm jumping twice. So I have my number 8. I know there's a decimal to start there. I have to go to the right twice. 1, 2. I can fill in zeros there to complete that. So my answer would be 800. And there's my 800 centimeters. Number 6, once again, is another conversion problem. It says King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. The U, the unit, is liters. This time I'm starting at milliliters, which is right here for milliliters. And I'm going to liters, which is right here. So we realize that I'm going to the left. I'm doing 1, 2, 3. So here's my original number. The decimal's here in a whole number, and I'm going 1, 2, 3. So my new number is 4 tenths. And I look down, and here it is. It might be said a tiny bit different if you have a 0 in front of the decimal, but it still means the same thing. Number 7, it says what is 3 thousandths as a decimal. So here's my decimal, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. I know I need a 3 in the thousandths, so I fill zeros in, and then I find my answer. If you notice, it's very important that you try to come up with the answer yourself and then find the matching multiple choice answer. Most of my answers have a 0 here, so that might help me to fill it in and find my answer, and my answer was choice D. Next, it says what is, and there's a number in words. I'm going to read that number in words to help me. Since it says words, I know this cannot be the answer right away. Then I notice that I start on the left side of the decimal, which is 67. Well, all of these choices have a 67. The decimal tells me and. They all say and. And the next part says 43. And I know that the last place that it ends in is the hundredths. So it's 43 hundredths. And my answer would be choice D. Next is question 9. It says, what is the expanded form? They're all written in expanded form to start, so that's good. We know that any of those can be the choice. I start right here by looking at the 6, which is in the tens place, which we know would be 6 times 10, and 6 times 10 is 60. So I know I can get rid of this choice because there's a 6, and this choice because there's a 600. And then I go to the ones place, which is a 7 times 1, which is equal to 7. They both have a 7. And then I go to the tenths place, and I have a 4 times 1/10, which would be 4 tenths. And this one has 4 tenths. This has 40. Next, it says, what is the expanded form? Using fractions. So this time, instead of using the decimal, we need to use fractions. So we're going to start with 6 times 10 again, which is 60. So I know I can get rid of this number and this letter choice. And then I'm going to 7 times 1. And then I'm going to 4 times 1/10. And when I look before I even continue on, I notice that this is 4 times 1/10. This is times 100. Number 11, it says to compare, and the first thing we learned when we're comparing numbers is that we should stack. So we're going to stack our numbers. Lining them up by their place value, we use our decimal to line them up by our place value. We start, they both have a 6 in the hundreds, a 3 in the tens, a 2 in the ones, and now we're at our decimal, so we go to our tenths place. And we notice that the 4 is bigger in the tenths place, so that the answer should go this way. So now I'm going to find the one that says that, and it's right here. If you are someone who finds it easier, don't forget you can always add a 0 into the empty spot so it's easier for you to view. Number 12, it says, what is this in descending order? Descending means to go down. If I'm going down, then I need my greatest to my least. So I look for which one, and if I stack them all, I can check to make sure they're in greatest to least. If I look at this one, choice A, I notice this is not true because the largest one is at the end. Now I'm going to go to choice B, stack them, so that I don't make any silly mistakes. It takes time sometimes to stack, but you know you'll get your answer right. So I go from 67 to 68, so I know that's not in descending order. So now I'm going to look at the next one. I'm going to fill in my zeros to help me here. So they're all 840. I know that this has a 1, so that's the greatest here. This one right here has a 1. And then my next largest one would be right here. And then my smallest is here. So right now that is in descending order. In case I made a mistake, I always want to go and check my last choice. I make sure I always check all my choices. And my last choice is not in descending order when I look at it. So that is incorrect. So my answer is C. Number 13, it wants me to round, so I'm going to rewrite my number and I'm going to use all of my strategies. It wants me to round to the tenths. Since it wants me to round to the 10th, I underline my number in the tenths place, box the number to the right. Since this 3 is less than 5, I know that I have to leave my neighbor alone. Remember, I'm only looking in the window, I can't touch it. So I leave my neighbor alone. Everything to the left stays the same, and I drop everything to the right. And so my answer is right there. Next one is another rounding one. So I'm going to write out my number, and I notice I'm going to the hundredths place. Since I'm going to the hundredths place, I underline it. Once again, it is not 5 or more. 5 or more would tell me to up the score, but since it's 4 or less, I'm going to let it rest. So I'm going to let the number 8 rest. I'm going to leave everything to the left the same, and I'm going to drop everything to the right, and when I look, I can find my answer. Notice that I keep coming up with the answer myself and then finding the matching answer in the multiple choice. Next, it tells me to solve. I want to find the sum because I'm adding. When I add decimals, we had talked about lining up the place value, so we line up our decimals just like we would line up our place value. In order to help us, we add in a 0. So now I'm going to add. I'm going to show all my work so that when I go back to it, I can double check my work and find my correct answer. And then I have my answer of B. Number 16, we're going to find the difference by subtracting. Once again, we also line up our decimals to line up our place value to subtract. I'm going to show all our work in order to solve it. Bring down our decimal right in the same spot, and I can find my answer. Number 17 says, which word problem matches the problem 5 and 1/100ths divided by 3? Well, let's see. Jeff has 3 pails of water. Each pail holds 5 and 1/10 liter. How many liters are in all 3? If I want to find what's in all 3, I'm going to multiply. And right now, I want to make sure I'm dividing, so that's not an answer. Then it says Craig has a box of candy that weighs 5 and 1/100 ounces. He wants to eat the candy over 3 days. If he eats the same amount of candy every day, how much candy will he eat each day? Well, wants me to split it up, so it is division. So I think this could be correct, but I want to make sure all my other choices don't have anything. Alexis bikes 5 and 1/100 miles to her friend's house. Then she bikes another 3 miles to the store. How far does she bike in all? Well, I'm adding these two together, and I don't want addition, so that's not correct. Then Maggie has 5 and 1/100 kilograms of gravel. She uses 3 kilograms of the gravel for a project at her school. How much gravel does she have left? That's telling me to subtract. I don't want subtraction. So now I can go back up and I can look, and the only choice I have available is B. Number 18, it says complete the number sentence. So I have this number right here, and since it ends in the hundredths place, we know that I'm talking about 355 hundredths. That's how I figured that part out, is that it ends in the hundredths place. That's how many I have. So if I look through this, choice B cannot be the answer. And then we know I'm dividing by 5, so then I can set it up on the side over here. Or we can set it up where we say 5 times what equals 355. So in this case, we can do our division. If you need it on the side, don't forget, does McDonald's sell burgers? So we have 71. And since we're talking about the hundredths up here, we want 71 hundredths. So we know that this can't be the answer, and this can't be the answer. So our answer is choice A. Number 19, we're actually going to just set up the division. In this case, there is a mistake in the question. That is a period for the end of the problem. Or actually, we can leave it and it still would be 5 as a whole number because the decimal's on the outside. But that is not meant for it to be part of the problem. It was written as a sentence. So I do, does McDonald's sell burgers? So first I'm going to divide, multiply, subtract, and now I bring down. I notice my next spot is a decimal. Once I bring down, my reminder is that I have to go back to the top. How many times can 5 go into 1? It goes in 0. I have to place that 0. 0 times 5 is 0. And now I subtract. And I bring down my next number. And since I brought down, I have to circle back to the top again. How many times does 5 go into 15? It's 3. 3 times 5 is 15. So my answer should be 1 and 3/100ths. I also can notice that I can check it if I want to make sure that I was correct. If I do 1 and 3/100ths times 5, it should equal 5 and 15/100ths. And in this case, it does. Number 20, which number sentence is not true? So we're going to go through them, and I'm going to line them up. I have 3/10ths. I have 25/100ths. I'm going to fill in my 0. And in this case, I know that this number is larger So that's true. So it can't be the answer because I'm looking for not true. 45 tenths would be written like this. So I'm going to line them up. I know that this is larger, which is true, so it can't be that one. Next one is 6 tenths. So 6 tenths would be 60 with a decimal right there. 6 tenths would be this, and 8 hundredths would be this. And when I add all of that together, I would get 60 and 68 hundredths. This is not true because it says 6. So right now that could be my answer. But I want to make sure. I'm going to check my last one, which is 6 thousandths and 6 hundredths, which would equal 66 thousandths, and that is less than 73 hundredths. So my answer C is correct. That is the review for the mid or the end of Module 1 assessment.